You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 32. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from Educalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there, and welcome to the show. If you are new to the Balanced Educator Podcast, welcome. We're so excited to have you here, and we invite you to subscribe so that we can connect with you every Monday when our new episodes come out. And if you are a returning listener, you listen every week, or you're binge listening, thank you so much for sharing your time with us again today. We love having you here. We love connecting with you here. All right, on this week's episode, we are talking to an amazing new teacher, Danielle Lefko. Yes, Lefko, she's my cousin. We have a lot of teachers in our family, and this was a really fun interview for me to do. So Danielle taught kindergarten last year, and this year she's teaching grade 8. We talk about how she used mindfulness in her classroom and specifically how she used our Educalm classroom resources. Danielle gave so many awesome ideas of the ways that she made our resources her own and ways that she created community in her classroom. This is such an inspiring interview. And Danielle, I really just wish that I could be way younger than you so I could be one of your students, because it's going to be such a treat for your students to be in your classroom. So guys, get ready to be super inspired by my interview with Danielle. So this is also the beginning of the school year for many of you. In Manitoba, this is the first week back to school if you are listening to this on the Monday that it airs. So good luck, everyone, and we're excited for you to have an intentional and mindful start to the school year. Last week, we taught 2 online workshops on how to start a mindfulness practice in your classroom with success. We know that so many of you want to start this practice, but you're not exactly sure where to start, and you want a really clear path to know exactly what to do. If you missed our first 2 workshops, no problem. We have one more this week on Thursday, September 6th at 7 p.m. Central Time. So if you're interested in attending that workshop, it is done live and online. Go to www.educalm.com/workshop. Educalm is spelled educalme.com/workshop. All right, let's go to the show. Hello there, and welcome to the Balanced Educator Podcast. Danielle, so excited to have you here with us today. How are you?
I'm doing so amazing. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, except that I have a bit of a cold. I'm recovering from a cold right now. So I'm actually feeling okay, but my voice sounds like I'm going through puberty and I'm a boy. But that's okay. It'll give everyone a good laugh, I think.
That's totally fine.
Yeah. So we are so excited to have you on the show, Danielle. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I subbed for just under a year, and then I was so excited and lucky to have a principal message me and ask me if I wanted to take over for a kindergarten teacher that was going on a leave of absence. She texted me. I totally thought it was a joke. I thought somebody was pranking me. I was so excited. I jumped at the opportunity. I think she asked me if I'd accept the position on a Thursday or Friday, and I started on the Monday.
Oh my gosh.
And I came in partway. Yeah, so it all happened just so fast. I came in partway through the school year, so I started February. It was 2 days before Valentine's Day. So that was something in itself. Just getting used to being in a kindergarten room, their daily routine, and then also having to plan something for them for this day.
That's a lot.
So, yeah. And then so I finished the school year last year doing kindergarten, and I absolutely loved it. And this upcoming year, I am doing grade 7, 8. So I have jumped quite a bit. And the school that I teach in is kindergarten to grade 8. So I went from the sweet little ducklings to the ones that are going through changes.
Yep, going through changes. They probably sound a lot like me.
They probably do.
That is awesome. I feel like your story, Danielle, is so similar to many teachers when they're first getting started. A lot of us have a vision of what grade we'd love to teach. And then for many of us, the story goes that we ended up getting put in a grade that we weren't expecting, or we were thrown into it with a term position or something like that. And you just have to like get your bearings and you're just thrown into the ring. And then, year after year, we aren't always teaching the same subjects or the same grade levels. So then it's like this whole starting over again with getting your bearings of the curriculum and the age group and maybe the school or the divisions. So I think a lot of people will be able to relate to your story for sure. For sure. Okay. So Danielle, you have been using Educalm in your classroom, or you did last year with your kindergartners. I'd love to hear why is it that you decided to start using Educalm in your classroom?
I had 19 amazing students. Lots of them were very, very high energy. Mm-hmm. There was a few that needed one-on-one attention. And I found myself getting a little overwhelmed trying to meet all of their needs, especially being the only adult in the room for the majority of the morning. So I, of course, talked to you, have been listening to all these wonderful podcasts and reading resources. And I thought that this was something I personally, as an educator, would benefit from. And if I was going to benefit from it, I thought that my amazing students would do the same. So we started implementing that into our daily routine. I would often do it when they came in from recess, because that was always a high energy time. I would have a difficult time getting them settled down because they'd be like, Miss Lefko, this happened at recess, this happened. So instead of having 19 little voices coming at me, once we got into the routine, which took so much time, they would just go to the carpet, sit down, and get comfortable. Some days I would let them know that they could go to a different area of the room, but majority of the time they would go to the carpet and wait for further instruction. Nice. And I would have the lights off, so it was kind of more of a soothing environment when they came on. And I would either have classical music, violin, piano, or some sort of nature sounds playing in the background that they could just come in and kind of get into that flow of the music as well. And then once they were settled down, we would listen to one of your introduction to mindfulness. So this was kind of a trial and error for me. At first, the first week, I went from 1, the next day 2, 3, 4, 5, and the kids weren't getting what I was hoping they would out of it. And I kind of reflected on it, and I realized that I was going too fast with it. Mm. So I took a step back, and we went back to step 1. And for that whole week, the next week, we listened to number 1 in the introduction to mindfulness. And by that Friday, the conversations we were having afterwards were so magical. The stuff that the kids were responding with was beautiful. That's just what comes to mind. I felt like a proud mama bear watching these guys grow and learn.
That is so great, Danielle. So just for those that might not be familiar with our program. So with the introduction to mindfulness, that's like the first module. It's kind of like the test out module, the place to start in our Educalm classroom subscription. Now it works over 5 days. So each day you have a 5-minute guided mindfulness practice that's centered around a specific theme. And then afterwards, there's worksheets and discussion ideas and ways to go deeper and further into the practice with your students farther than just the guided mindfulness practice. So as the teacher, you can choose to just do the guided audio, or you can take it further. So with the older grades, oftentimes you do day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 throughout the week. And then we repeat the practices for a month. So that's kind of how we set it up. But now you're saying that with the younger kids, and we've heard this from a few different teachers that are in the kindergarten grade 1 age, is that it actually works better to repeat day 1 for at least a week. And then the following week, you start with day 2, and so on and so forth. So can you tell me I'd like to go back a little bit. So you said it was at first hard to make this routine, right? I think it's important that we don't gloss over the fact that when we're first starting to teach anything to our students in our classroom, it takes time just to create the routine before you really see the benefits. So how did you deal with that? How did you set up this routine with your students?
I'm not going to lie. There were times where I just felt like I was pulling my hair out, and it seemed like what I was doing was just failing, but I kept persevering and kept pushing. And I knew that in the long run, after I've done all of this setting up for this routine, that it was going to be so beneficial. So I just kept trying every day, and every day got a little bit better. And this probably took for sure 2 weeks before we fully got into the meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah. And I think that when you're in the moment, each time it doesn't seem to be working. Like day 1, you're like, oh man, that didn't work. Day 2, oh, it's still not working. And every day it feels like a failure. But when you think in the long term, 2 weeks in a whole half of a school year isn't really that long, right? To develop that routine over 2 weeks, that's not really that long. And then they're benefiting from the practice throughout the school year. That's so cool. So you were saying that you saw some great transformations in your students. What kind of things did you see in them?
So a lot of them would react. And that's a very common thing for that age group, is if they were feeling upset, or if somebody took that block away that they wanted to play with, they would react. And oftentimes there would be tears and yelling and tantrums. And this still happened partway through, and it still happened till the very end, because there's going to be that occurrence. But the amazing thing is, some of those kids would stop, step back, and they would use some of the tools that we were learning. And it was so amazing to see. And then one of their friends would come around and be like, did you see they just used that 5-finger breathing? And they were encouraging each other, which was awesome to see. And if they possibly weren't using a good method, if they were reacting instead of responding, I often found some of them reminding them, like, hey, are you feeling like this? Why don't you go sit in the chill tent and do some deep breathing? Why don't you use your 5-finger breathing? Why don't you go get a fidget? So they were building up each other, which at that age was so incredible to see.
Oh, that just gave me goosebumps. That's amazing.
Right?
Okay, tell me about this
so
chill
great.
tent. What is this chill tent?
So I created a chill zone because I had quite a few students that when they were starting to get escalated, they had a tough time self-regulating. So instead of interrupting the whole class, we set another routine in place. It was kind of this awesome tent that hung from the ceiling, and they could go and sit in there. I had a beanbag pillow in there so they could go hang out, and I had sparkly lights around in it. So it was just this soothing, calming area that they could go to when they knew that they needed it. And they could take however much time that they needed until they knew that they were ready. So it wasn't something when I'm like, okay, you need to go relax. I'd be like, go for 5 minutes, because sometimes 5 minutes was too much or not enough. So I was really putting it on them to self-regulate the amount of time that they needed until they were ready to come back and be with the whole group again.
That's amazing. And wow, in kindergarten, to be learning the skills of self-awareness, to be able to recognize how much time they need on their own before they're ready to come back to the group. That's amazing. And did you find that they made pretty good choices themselves on the amount of time, or was that something that you really had to teach?
in the beginning, it was a lot of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But they started really getting it. And I'm just so proud with them because they grew such a tremendous amount from when I started with them till the end of the year.
That is
amazing. And I'm really
amazing.
hoping that they continue working with this, because I just think it'd be so awesome to see their transformation from now until they're finished their career in high school and starting their life.
It's amazing. Oh, so awesome. So I'd love to know, one of the biggest things that Joe and I recognized in our classrooms when we were doing this was that in the beginning, we thought this is an extra thing that we're adding to our timetable. It's an extra activity we're trying to fit into our already busy day. But we learned really quick that it kind of seemed to like give us more time throughout the day, because it really supported our students in their learning. Did you have any experiences of that in your classroom? Like, how did this practice that you were doing intentionally every day sort of trickle throughout the day?
So I was only with them for the morning.
Okay.
And yeah, because kindergarten just half day.
Okay.
But I found that they were easier to focus once they were calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have heard you mention this before when you were first starting, that you tried to implement it when they were already at a heightened state of excitement. And that is when I also first tried to do it. I'm like, okay, our level is way up here. We need to bring it down here. And I think that might have been in that first week when I tried to introduce all of this at the same time. And we just really took our time and focused on one aspect. And I started it once they were calm. And then if we were doing it when some of them were escalated, they fell into that routine because it was a routine. Mm-hmm. They eventually know that when they were coming in from recess, it wasn't that time to stay super excited and running and jumping off walls. It was time to come into class and let go of that and just be in that moment and flow with how the classroom is going to go.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think people are going to get really great ideas and takeaways from how you did this in your classroom with your kindergartners. Now, this past week, we did an online workshop teaching educators how to start a mindfulness practice in their classroom. So you were already doing Educalm in your classroom last year, but you still came to the workshop. What were your takeaways from that workshop? Did you learn anything new?
Yeah, there's so many helpful things. I have been so lucky to have an administrator that's been so on board with me bringing this into the school setting. So I never really had to introduce it to them fully. I said, hey, this is something that I'm interested in doing. I think that it will benefit for this. And they're like, do it. That sounds amazing. Go for it. I know that there are some other administrators that might not be as on board or might not be fully educated on this practice and not know the benefits from it. So that letter that you guys have pre-made for teachers to pass along to that educator to open that door of communication regarding this area was so well thought and well put together that it will just make it such a smooth entry point for people to start bringing this into their schools. Yeah. Which so amazing.
Awesome.
Also, the parent letter too will be really helpful. And that's something that I'm going to be looking into. I haven't decided if I'm going to keep it or kind of alter it for my parents or not, but we will see as it nears closer and closer.
Awesome. So, in our workshop, and we have one more happening this week. It's on September 6th at 7 p.m. Central Time. So if you guys are interested in coming to the workshop to learn the 5 steps to starting a mindfulness practice in your classroom, you can sign up at www.educalm.com/workshop. And Educalm is spelled EDUCALME /workshop. workshop. So when you come to the workshop, we actually give you a pre-written email or letter that you can send to your administrators if you aren't sure how to ask them about starting a mindfulness practice in your classroom. If you aren't sure exactly how to explain mindfulness, it's all done for you. You can copy it and paste it directly, or you can make changes to it. Totally up to you. And then communicating with parents is so important too. We want to have open lines of communication with our students' families so that they know what's going on in the classroom. They can get excited about the fact that their child is learning mindfulness. So we also have a pre-written letter to parents to help you have that communication and make it nice and clear and easy too. So I'm glad that you appreciated that, because we figured that would be a big help for teachers. So this year you are teaching middle school. You're teaching grade 7 and 8. How do you plan on using, because this year you're going to be using Educalm Classroom, the full year-long resource program. So how do you think you're going to use that with your middle schoolers?
So I feel so fortunate. We have reading buddies and we pair up with other grades. And I'm lucky enough for my 7/8s to be paired up with the grade 1s. So those were my kindergartners from last year. So how I'm going to introduce it is I'm going to get the grade 1s to introduce it to my 7/8 class.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
So I think that's going to be empowering the grade 1s. I feel that they're going to be so excited to share their knowledge with the big kids in the school. And then once they do that, I can dive deeper into it with my class. But I think that's going to be an awesome way to start off the year and reading buddies.
That is so great. So is this a practice that you're going to start like first thing at the beginning of the year?
It sure is. I am wanting to build a very strong classroom community and let them know that this is a safe space. And I think using this is going to be an amazing tool to help the kids realize that and to become comfortable in this classroom setting and know that we are a family and that we are together all year, and that these are not tools that they're just going to use while in school, but every aspect of their life.
That is so awesome. So how are you planning to set this practice up during your day? Like, what's it going to look like?
So I have actually carved out 20 minutes every day to have a mindfulness slot. I don't get to see my kids first thing in the morning, but as soon as they come into period 2, we are going to do mindfulness. And like I did with the kindergartners, I am going to have some sort of soft music playing so that they enter. And I'm hoping that's going to take down their energy level and that they're going to go with the flow of the tone that I'm trying to set for that period. And I know that might seem like a lot of time for some people, but it doesn't always have to be fully that. This can be time just for them. Mm-hmm. Like we will do one of the Educalm classroom modules, like module 1 and the first one in there. Mm-hmm. And then they can sometimes just take that time for them because they might need to decompress from something that happened with a friend or something that happened at home. And I think that it's so important for kids, for students, for learners, for everybody. In order to learn fully, they need to be in a calm mindset. Because if there's something else going on in their life, they're not going to get their full educational learning experience out of that day. And I think that these tools will really help set them up for success.
That is so awesome. So the guided Educalm practices are 5 minutes long. What do you plan to do with those extra 15 minutes that you've blocked in for mindfulness?
Conversation. We are going to be talking about what they experienced, what they felt, just classroom building, bonding, all of that fun stuff.
What a great way to build community. That's awesome.
So I didn't mention this previously, but after all the kindergartners last year were like, can we listen to the other Miss Lefko? And we would put you on.
So cute.
They asked every day so amazing. When we would put you on after, we would always have the most amazing conversations. And there's 2 things that still just stick out so much. One little girl would always say, I can feel my heart beeping. In the beginning, it was beeping so fast, but now it's just beeping nice and slow.
So cute.
Right? And what was amazing for me is I got to see this through their eyes, because I never would have thought of it like that. So, and then another little boy, and it was always kids that I wasn't expecting to say these things. One little boy, we were doing the mindfulness is like a flashlight.
Yeah.
And he says, that flashlight's kind of like an X-ray, but it's not an X-ray for your bones. So that in itself, he didn't have the vocabulary to explain fully what he was thinking, like that it was scanning your emotions and your feelings of your body. But he took his prior knowledge and placed it. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And it was so
awesome.
amazing.
That is so great. So I'd love to know, a lot of teachers ask us, what should I do if I have a student that's resistant to this practice, that isn't really getting into it? What advice would you give those teachers from the experience that you have so far?
So I had a few of those, and I would just say, hey, you don't have to fully participate. You don't have to participate at all, but I really want to. I need to do this for me right now. So I would appreciate if you just stayed there where you are and just were silent for now. Just if you stayed quiet, you can get a book and do something quietly if this isn't something that you want to participate in, but I do, and I know that others do. So we need to be respectful and mindful of that. And most of the time they were like, oh, you want to do this, Miss Lefko? I'm like, yeah, it's something that I need to do. They're like, okay. And then half the time, me saying that I need this, that was a buy-in for them. So a lot of those students ended up coming and joining in on the practices. And those were the ones that always ended up enjoying it the most, or being like, hey, we need to do this right now because I'm feeling very excited. And they would go in the chill tent and they would do that. So it was such an amazing, I'm just so excited about this experience with the kids. I just keep going everywhere right now.
It's so awesome. It's so cool to be able to share a life skill that you really see so clearly in their behaviors, in their attitudes, in their values, in the classroom culture. This 5-minute practice that you're doing every day extends to everything. And we talk a lot about how mindfulness is a skill that we can teach in school, just like we would teach reading. So you teach a child specifically to read. So you're teaching them the skills that they require to be able to read. But once they learn to read, now they're using that skill in their math class, in science, in their regular life, and you get to watch them flourish from that one skill of reading to being able to apply that to many areas of their life. And the same is true with mindfulness. So when you sit down and you have that formal practice, then it's so awesome when you see that them taking those skills into their regular life and how it helps to improve their lives, right? Because we care for our kids so much. Like, we want them to live good lives and be happy people. So when we can give them a tool that supports them in that, it's just so rewarding as a teacher.
So rewarding. I always get so crazy emotional, and listening to all these kids and their responses all the time, they're like, are we going to make you cry? I was like, probably. If you keep going, you probably will.
So awesome. So there was one thing that you did with your kindergartners too, that I remember you showing me about, which was the flower petal breathing. So that's an activity that we actually have. It's a free resource in the Balanced Educator free resources library. So if you guys are interested in checking this resource out, just go to educalm.com/the Balanced Educator. And we have a bunch of activities in there that you can use for free. So I think that was the first thing that you started with before you got introduction to mindfulness. You had that flower petal breathing. And how did you use that with your kindergartners?
So I actually printed it off first, and I showed them. I just held one up. I showed them, and we kind of talked about what they thought it was. they gave me their responses, what they were seeing. One boy was like, I have flowers outside of my house. I'm like, awesome. We're making connections to this. And then I gave it to them and they got to color it. So they got to choose whatever they wanted. They made it their own. So it was very personal to them. I then laminated them and then I showed them how to use the flower petal breathing. And it's this awesome resource. It has this big, beautiful flower, and then the kids can follow along the petals. And one petal will say inhale. So as they trace their finger along that petal, they're going to take a nice, long, deep breath in. And then once they get to the next petal that says exhale, they're going to do a nice, slow exhale. And that took some teaching, the inhale, exhale, me modeling a lot of it. But they then, okay, that I, that's going to be the in, and that E, that's going to be the exhale. So even though they couldn't necessarily read it at that age, they had those prompts to be like, okay, we are going to do that. And even if they weren't doing it on the right ones, they were still doing it. They would trace their fingers and use those big, deep breaths in and out, inhale and exhale, to help self-regulate themselves if they were feeling upset or anxious or angry.
That is so awesome. So did they just have it like at their desk and they could use it whenever they wanted?
We did a lot of movement and moving around. We never stayed at one spot. There was lots of different centers, lots of different areas. So I just had it in a pile in a certain area of the classroom. And then it was just open for them. If they needed to go and get it, they could wander off from whatever they're doing, go grab that, find a spot, sit down right there and do that. And then when they were done, they would just put it back in the pile.
That's so great. I love how you gave your students so much flexibility and opportunity to choose what was right for them. And I think that can sometimes be really scary as a teacher, to give your students, especially at such a young age, so much space to make their own choices, because at that age, you can't expect them to always be making good choices. So it can be kind of scary to give them that space, but how amazing that you gave them, you empowered them to recognize what their needs were and then respond to them in a mindful way. So amazing.
So awesome. And of course, there were times that I had to guide them like, hey, how are you feeling right now? And we'd have a conversation. I would talk to them like they were a peer. And they'd be like, you know what? I'm not doing so good. I'd be like, why? And they'd tell me why. I say, okay, what can we do to help you? And then they would choose. They'd have the chill tent. They'd have their 5-finger breathing. They would have fidgets. There's some weight lizards. So if they were just needing something, they would put that on their shoulders. And of course, the flower petal breathing. So then I did that enough that some of the girls were asking each other that, like, you were just not nice to me. Like, is something wrong? So it was just amazing to see them making these connections at such a young age. It was fabulous.
That is so great. So Danielle, I'm so excited to see how your year in middle school unfolds and how your grade 1s are going to teach your grade 8s about mindfulness. And I'm really excited to see how, since you've blocked off this dedicated time every day, which we really recommend doing, doesn't have to be as long as 20 minutes, but I love that you gave yourself that space so that you can have those discussions, you can create that community, you can go deeper with the Educalm classroom curriculum if you want, deeper than just the guided mindfulness practices, but also doing the worksheets and the lessons. And we have a couple projects and things like that in there too. So excited to see how this unfolds for you. Now, Danielle, I'd love to know if someone is unsure whether mindfulness is right for them in their classroom or whether doing an Educalm practice is right for them. What advice would you give them?
Give it a try. What is the harm in trying? And if you're so concerned about bringing it into your class, use it for yourself first. Because that's what really, really got me hooked. This is something that I started implementing into my life because I have lots of anxiety and I didn't want to be on medication and all this stuff all the time. So I started implementing mindfulness. I started doing just 3 minutes or even 3 deep breaths it makes such a world of a difference. Those 3 deep breaths, it really roots you to the ground and it brings you back to what you're doing. And journaling is also great, really gets out everything. So you just need to do it. Don't think, just do.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, it might feel like a risk at the beginning, but just try it. What do you have to lose?
Exactly. And you will love it. That's all. You will just absolutely love it. And if it's risky in the beginning, the reward is worth so much more.
Danielle, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience with our audience. I'm sure they are going to get so many amazing takeaways. You had so many great ideas of how you implemented our resource in your own way in your classroom. And just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to start putting this stuff into my classroom this year.
Wow, how inspiring is Danielle? Thank you so much, Danielle, for being on the show. There were so many awesome takeaways from your experience that I'm sure everyone is going to get excited about how they can bring this practice into their classroom this year. All right, guys, your takeaway, your exit ticket for this week is, if you haven't already done it, if you haven't already attended, sign up for our free online workshop so that you can learn exactly the 5 easy steps for starting a mindfulness practice in your classroom with success and with confidence. You can sign up at www.educalm.com/workshop. And for what we're up to this week, we are obviously teaching the workshop, so preparing for that. It's also the first week of school, so we are making sure that we're supporting our Educalm classroom teachers in any questions that they might have as they kick this off in their first week of school. Josiane has some exciting news about this school year, but I will let her tell you herself next week on the show. And this weekend, September 7th to 9th, we will be at the Prairie Love Festival at Birds Hill Park near Winnipeg. We are going to be teaching 2 workshops. One is on Sunday at 11 a.m. This class is a karma class, so you don't have to have tickets for the full weekend to be able to attend. Come with your family. It's $10 per family, and do some mindful movement and breathing and yoga with us together. And then at 2, we will be presenting a workshop for festival attendees called The Mindful Family, Developing Emotional Intelligence. So we'll be talking all about emotions, how they work in our bodies, and how we can help to move emotions through our bodies and teach about emotions to our kiddos in our lives. So we hope to see you there. And if you see us walking around the festival or in one of the workshops, or you come to our workshop, make sure you come say hi. We love meeting you guys in person. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next Monday. Hey there, Balanced Educator. We appreciate you and the work that you're doing in the world. We are here to support you, so we've created a free resource library for you to use anytime you want. Resources for mindfulness for you and your kiddos at home or in the classroom. You can get these free resources by going to www.educalm.com/The Balanced Educator. Again, that's www.educalm, that's spelled educalme.com/The Balanced Educator. Thank you for being a part of our Educalm community.